Well, we're going to talk about DeSci. I don't know if some of you have an idea what a DeSci is. But first, we'll present ourselves. Well, I'm Rodrigo Núñez. You can call me Rodo. And, you know, my traditional background is quite interesting. I will share this story. It's interesting because my traditional background as a researcher, I'm a coral reef ecologist. I have a master's degree in that. And since 5 years, I have been quite exploring how can we create proper use cases of technology using blockchain. And I just find this concept of open science. You know, what is the evolution of open science, integrating blockchain and token engineering? And it was quite a long journey so far. You know, I just met these guys 5 years ago, and I have been contributing with their projects. So basically, DeSci is the second iteration of the open science movement. And we're going to share some ideas and exploration that we have been done since 5 years or so in that particular concept. But first of all, I want to know more about, you. Present ourselves in a few sentences if you want to.
Okay, I'll just go first. Hi guys, I'm Eva from the our side, and before I dive into the host DeSci ecosystem, I've been working with layer 2 Zikaroa VCs, and about 3 years ago, I exploring the DeSci things and fully dive into the DeSci area, and I found this community called our side. And now we're officially transforming not just a DeSci-focused community to a AI-native infrastructure for open science, which transforming the scientific intent to a fundable asset.
Hey. Yeah, my name is Joshua. You may know me from the Bonfires app, which is live at the event right now. But Bonfires is actually a protocol built by DeSci World. And DeSci World was built in 2021 to at first attempt to bring more funding opportunities to novel scientific endeavors. There was a lot of excitement in the 2021 bull run, lots of money, lots of communities doing great things, well, NFT type things. And I thought, why not use some of that energy and that money towards like science in particular, and let's say less institutionally backed scientific endeavors. As it turned out, we went into quite a long bear market, and DeSci also basically never experienced a bull market. And so DeSci has been a very interesting space to be in over the last 5 years, where some of the most interesting ideas, some of the most important ideas, in fact, in my opinion, around how we can use blockchain technology, in particular the Ethereum ecosystem, to further the scientific movement, similarly to the open science movement. But with relatively little traction and liquidity, it's been quite a journey, and I think we're going to talk about it a bit today on this panel, as to how DeSci, the intentions of DeSci, but also how it's grown and how it's faltered, and maybe perhaps where we can go with it in the next, let's say, 5 to 10 years. Yeah, DeSci World, we've been focusing a lot on community onboarding and getting like more researchers and more Web3 natives into the DeSci aspects. Looking forward to talking about it today.
Woo, that's great. So it's quite interesting because, that's my personal opinion, but many decentralized protocols that we have seen usually incubate in labs, of applied computer science, or engineering itself, So like Arbitrum, we have seen many well-known protocols, L2s and L1s, that usually have a really good, solid research group, particularly, but, in token engineering and stuff that is interested in them, for them, but, regarding to basically blockchain stuff. There are many institutions worldwide that actually have active labs in applied cryptography that are quite exploring decentralization itself. How can we create proper incentives? But, one of the key aspects of the foundations of blockchain is actually DeSci, we have seen that many OGs in the space, I consider myself part of the second wave of DeSci endeavors or enthusiasts, if you want to see that way. But by the end of the day, we have seen many initiatives like protocol apps, like the bio ecosystem, like other guys that actually have been quite active, the financial aspect of decentralization itself, in storage. IPFS, for example, a veritable column of many NFTs. What is the state? I want to ask you, what is the state of DeSci right now? So proceed, if you want to.
Sure. So yeah, right now DeSci is in a relatively dormant state. There was a large movement of, let's say, capital well, the most amount of capital, I suppose, that DeSci has received, and attention and interest around 2021, 2022. There was a lot of good ideas, a lot of intentions of basically creating a novel scientific infrastructure that institutions, researchers, and degens alike can all participate in and do verifiable science. Many people had great intentions, some people raised money, very few were able to execute on that because of various tailwind reasons, market-driven, the technology wasn't really there. But ultimately, the DeSci movement has been focused very much on, let's say, the technological or the technical build that you can use to improve the scientific processes. So, for example, how can you do decentralized storage? How can you do decentralized funding? How can you do privacy, ZK-preserving transactions? And generally, like governance through DAOs and tokenomic aspects. These were, I would suggest, ambitious and the right direction, but just ultimately unsuccessful because few researchers used it, few institutions used any of these aspects. It's quite immature. And so we're at a point now where DeSci has mostly shed all of the, let's say, tourists that are in the space, more so than I think any other vertical in crypto right now, perhaps maybe NFTs more so. And so there's a small community with little adoption, but with a very clear vision of how science can be improved using blockchain. So for example, Rodrigo and Ava, we met about 4 to 5 years ago. We know many other people from that sort of period of time who have pivoted and gone to AI, gone to data, gone to sort of verifications, and sort of, but at the core of it, really want to have a research application of their technologies. So that's where we're at, in my opinion, and I have my own personal ideas of how we should progress, but I'd like to hear your points of view.
I think from what I see, like DeSci definitely like goes through different waves, and the latest wave is like end of 2024 and beginning of 2025, right? There's so many attention, like talking about like DeSci as a meme. So what we are going through right now is kind of rebuilding the trust for DeSci. Like how could we get more researchers to trust the DeSci concept? And we're not just a meme cultures. We're not just about like the token value and also like all those things. What DeSci is truly art is to like providing the, I would say, a new method for the researchers to accelerating their research process. So, and also with our exploration with all those scientists we've been talking with, the funding, the reputation, and citation are the most things they are like care about. So that's why we want to explore the whole thing, like in the DeSci. And I know right now there are less noise in the DeSci area, so it's just a right time to building things.
Yeah, I believe that DeSci is like a particular niche that needs to, have this kind of ethos that we're building on the long run. It doesn't matter what will happen, because science has been here since millennia, technology since the fire. That's why we're quite aligned with bonfires in that. And knowledge is basically a market, Science is one of the biggest market in the world. So we need to how can we have a proper approach to decentralize this kind of frameworks that we already have? And how can we involve more individuals? For example, I will share this use case. We have been exploring in terms of conservation, of coral reefs, one of the most delicate ecosystems in the world. So essentially, our exploration so far is that, okay, we need to build or to allocate capital in various ways, financial capital, intellectual capital, very important. We need to mitigate this kind of digital divide situation because how can we build this? Essentially with decentralized networks. It doesn't matter where you are. If you have internet connection or if you have a proper device that could allow you to participate on a network and contribute in a system, you could have proper incentives. Or a part of the incentives, you could mitigate all these aspects regarding to the sharing knowledge. Many knowledge is you need to pay to acquire that knowledge. So I believe that DeSci could solve that, in at least in the mid and short term. We have seen many universities that are quite adopting the technology and have really active groups here in the US, in Australia, in many parts of the world, of Europe, for example. And here comes my next question, and this is more like an inside question for you. of all the things that we have seen in the space, how can we reimagine DeSci, in at least in 5 years,
Yeah, I mean, can I take this? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have a question to the audience. Hands up if you've heard of DeSci before. Okay, wonderful. Hands up if you've ever interacted with a DeSci project, bought a DeSci token, done anything with a DeSci. Okay, 1, 2. Okay, 2. Great. So the interesting thing I think about the term DeSci, it has kind of been sullied in recent terms, in recent years because of some of the let's say extractive activities. But the thing about DeSci is it's specifically focusing on the decentralization of the scientific processes through blockchain technology. Now, as Rodrigo mentioned, a lot of institutions, universities, research organizations are already using some of these technologies in some way and will continue to adopt ZK, blockchain, AI systems, whatever, and even potentially decentralized funding through more centralized chains, example. But let's say DeSci on Ethereum, what differentiates that? Why would a researcher participate in this much more decentralized open network rather than through these other more centralized solutions which provide the same attestation frameworks, they provide the same data security, they provide the same ability for you to interoperate around the world. But why would you do DeSci rather than on-chain science? So from my perspective at DeSci World and from the work that we've done, the biggest problem we see with academia and institutions and research in general is the social aspect of how people coordinate. And it's a lot of DeSci has been trying to build technical solutions rather than build the social solutions or to engineer social change within the research communities. And I think that this is the biggest unlock, which is, okay, as a researcher or as let's say a expert group, let's say, a professional society perhaps, back when research or science really truly was decentralized, where people could participate, they get the same knowledge, they can make the same sort of the same sort of refutations, go through the scientific method in this open way. That is sort of, I think, where DeSci needs to go back to. And that inherently leads into openness of data. That inherently leads into permissionless access through, for example, the Ethereum blockchain. And I think that focusing on this sort of particular aspect of, right now science and academia is incredibly institutionalized. For many good reasons, there's many great things that we need to preserve around that relationship. But ultimately, the scientists are entirely reliant on the institutions for money, for knowledge, for access, for reputation. And that means that the scientific community is the bitch of the institution, right? 100%. And in the community, let's say the regular 95% of people that consume the science, they consume the pharmaceuticals, they consume the research, it informs their daily life, it informs the policies that they're governed by. They are completely separate from the scientific community, and there's basically no trust between the two. Maybe 1,000 years ago, you would have a healer in your society, or you'd have a super smart guy in your society, and he would be getting free food, he'd be getting free accommodation, but he'd be doing everything, right? People would trust his word because he's super smart. That sort of breakdown between the general community and the scientific community is one of the worst things that's happened with the institutionalization of science. And I think that if we develop new systems of reputation, decentralized funding, decentralized access, then we can break down that barrier between the scientific community and the, let's call it, non-scientific community, and make the scientific community increasingly less reliant on institutions who have poor incentives. If there's some kind of feedback mechanism here rather than just this, then I think that's how science progresses. And that's why I'm excited about DeSci, because I think that's the one thing that can potentially do that.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. So what I see is the funding side, because the funding is the very crucial part just before you start the research. So within our side, we are having this funding release via the milestone-based mechanism, and which brings more transparency and also involved with AI agent to accelerating the whole process. So funding is the most important part from what we see.
I totally agree with that. Funding is a crucial part, and how can we create flow systems, in funding? That it could be, we could apply, or gamify in a way with all these applied theory that we have in the space. But, we need to develop, in science, usually we have many stakeholders. And all the stakeholders, like Josh said, usually want something, or they want to support you, but they want a certain kind of agreement with you, in terms of, okay, you will share knowledge with us. And the IP situation. I believe that DeSci in these days have many verticals, One is storage. It's quite well known seen in the space. For example, many universities actually have applied cryptography, in their servers right now. I just had the opportunity to be in Boston last year, and I just have some insights about, okay, that's really cool, and many journals usually have that kind of storage. They do not share it because it's quite intrinsic, they just do it for security reasons. But by the end of the day, another aspect that it would be quite good to explore more, and how can we create the proper coordination, because coordination is everything, and that's why I'm quite aligned with Gitcoin and this kind of allocation mechanism that we have seen since a couple of years. But by the end of the day, in this era of AI, for example, how can we integrate all the infra that we already have in the space, but in a particular niche that is not explored yet, because we lack about certain credibility, I believe, for the Web3 communities, because all the products that are quite creating in the space are for users, Web3 users. How can we onboard properly researchers and independent researchers that actually need to use the technology? And I will share another experience. I'm from Mexico. I'm from a tiny island in the Caribbean, Mexican Caribbean, Cozumel. It's well known, we lack a lot of situations regarding infra and all that. So we have been used blockchain. I just decided to use blockchain when I just entered to my master's like 4 years ago, to allocate capital, and to have another incentive, because I'm a macro photographer too, And we need to create this kind of awareness using the blockchain technologies to boost citizen science in a way. I believe that that would be a proper way to onboard researchers, with art. That's why we're quite aligned with all the tracks that right now are here in ETHBoulder. Renee has been doing an awesome work in funding creatives, because science is a creative process, We are creators itself. That's why we merge, since the Renaissance, So I believe that AI agents play a crucial part. I want to know what are your insights? How can we adapt or adopt the stack that we know about Lisa, all these kind of blockchains that have developed many explorations with AI agents. And you, Josh, that you have been working a lot since 5 years or 4 years, in knowledge. And right now you're quite pivoting with bonfires in terms of that. How can we create better coordination in communities? And how can we bridge researchers and inspire other independent researchers to continue their stuff, their research lines in isolated places, So go ahead. Eva, you want to share? Or Josh?
Is that your questions?
Again, I'm gonna play a little bit on this social aspect a bit. We have this phrase internally, which is there's no difference between learning, work, and play. It's all research. It's this kind of idea that if, for example, the Boulder bonfire that we have right now, that's going to be a persistent knowledge artifact that anyone can use forever, right? However long it's hosted. There's so many insights that are going to be in that somebody else around the world who's designing, I don't know, a localism chapter, or is perhaps thinking about AI in society, they could query that bonfire and get really high quality knowledge directly from the source of people here talking. Now that's valuable to the research process, and maybe there are researchers here, but this bonfire is not a specific research institutional bonfire. It's just a thing that a bunch of people have made together that has a very powerful research application. And that is really what the foundation of citizen science is being able to allow people to participate in the scientific ledger in a way that science today can trust it and use it, like access it, and also verify it. So there's a few things that we're missing, in the DeSci space, in particular around high quality reputation mechanisms, because that's really a big thing. But ultimately, we need more participation of very smart people in this space who might not consider themselves a researcher to basically generate knowledge that can be used in this decentralized way. There are a few maverick, renegade researchers that I know personally who are very interested in this technology and who are using it, not necessarily us, but just the blockchain and thinking about these open systems. And we need to grab those people, incentivize them, and really look after them because they're the bridge. But also we need much more examples on our side as to how this technology is already being used to generate research artifacts. It's already being used to inform the collective intelligence, right? And so from our perspective with AI, we've built Bonfires, which allows, for those that don't know, it allows information to be aggregated in real time from various ingestion points like Telegram, Discord, whatever, wherever your data is, turns it into a knowledge graph, and that becomes memory or shared memory for AI agents. And we will network these bonfires so you can access a whole network of knowledge generated by people in real time. The original title, the original name for bonfires was research collectives, because it was born out of DeSci World, and the intention was give a group of people a way to capture their knowledge and present it in a way that researchers can use. And so this is the foundation of what I think we need to do to empower the scientist in general, is to kind of redefine what is a scientist and what is a researcher. Of course, without denigrating the quality of science and the research process, which has to be robust. But we can recreate robust systems. We just need to kind of, are you a researcher? Like, have you gone and gotten your qualifications? Then you're not a researcher. I think that needs to change immediately. Like I'm not a researcher, but I've done a lot of research, and I think the stuff that I know is very valuable. But I'm certainly not qualified as other people would hope, right?
Yeah, that's awesome. So, what is your perspective, Eva, in terms of how can we use these AI agents essentially to verify, and create like an attribution layer, to the funding aspect of things, because as I know, we're quite working into developing something, regarding the reputation systems in that, with that perspective. So you could elaborate more if you want to.
Well, I think with the agentic era, like the hypothesis can be verified or not only verify, propose like 10x or 100x than ever, right? So with the infrastructure we're creating, it's more like a credit layer between the capital and scientists and blockchain technology, and also with the mechanism which I just mentioned, like the milestone-based funding mechanism. AI agents runs a very crucial part in it, like its auditor, like the each intent, each hypothesis, and also once the the progress be complete, it automatically releasing the funds. So all those progress will be accelerating with AI agents, and with the new era, I think that's the thing that we are just creating, and to helping the whole process to be faster than ever.
Agree. I want to add something first. AI, usually people believe that AI, it could be only used for example, for knowledge or for funding, but AI actually could be used, for example, as a researcher in coral reefs, in conservation. AI for climate, We could verify systems, and, RWAs are a trendy thing, in the blockchain space. So, for example, there are many devices that do not have, right now, for example, in terms of monitoring environmental battles. We could essentially create incentives, in those devices, basically to monetize and continue doing the science, the battle science in those research groups. So I believe that AI could be used at many levels, for ecological modeling. We have some aspects of machine learning that could be quite implemented too, to develop metrics and certifications, for example, in terms of bonding, carbon, biodiversity credits in the future. So we have a long run, in terms of all the research that could be done, properly on a decentralized way, in terms of energy. For example, the DAC aspect of the Web3 space, Vitalik just said that, is quite related on the long-term foundational aspects of DeSci itself, So, go ahead, Josh, if you have some.
Yeah, I think the AI levels the playing field for everyone, right? In every way, you need 2 developers, not 20, to build a protocol. So you need 1 researcher, not an institution, to figure out something really interesting, right? The auditing process of AI is going to be very powerful for that, because research needs verification and audit trails, and AI can audit pretty easily and very increasingly so cheaply. So that's going to allow a lot more participation from citizens who have verified contributions that academia itself can listen to, which is very exciting. Sorry, you said something just at the end there, which I wanted to touch on, but I forget. Okay.
Real world assets, DeSci?
Yes, this is it. Thank you so much. Thank you. So the interesting thing is that the research process is going to be very much like it already is. The research process is entirely integrated with the technological growth process, right? So like AI research and everything like this is all directly institutionalized. It's directly like in the academic system, and really we're looking at new paradigms with AI for everything. And so we're looking at new paradigms with AI with participation in the research process. And I should be able to go to a person who's doing machine learning analysis because he knows how to do it, because he's talking to his Claude all the time, and pay him the money so that he can basically improve my model. And I shouldn't have to go and get it published in Nature for it to be verified. I shouldn't have to go to a university and pay them a grant in order to get access to that knowledge. And I think that ultimately, for better or worse, AI blows open this whole thing. And if we apply it specifically to research, then it's going to be very powerful. Although I am just saying now live on stage that I do think the DeSci branding is something that we need to think about as a space.
I agree. So I would love to continue with this question. You know, what blocks DeSci adoption? Tech or trust?
I think people need. What I would love is if the community just recognizes that it's all research, and that like DeSci could be a very specific vertical with very specific integrations with academic institutions or whatever. But it's like we're all participating in the research process all the time just by doing our work. Like if we are recording it with AI and it's going to OpenAI servers or it's going to Google servers, let's just capture that same data. Let's make it available to everybody. Let's incentivize it properly. That's the biggest thing probably, is how to get people to incentivize them to participate in this process.
Yeah, I agree. What do you think, Eva?
But yeah.
I think the trust. Like,
Trust?
We have so many matured technology nowadays, layer 1, layer 2s, the like ZK proofs. We need to build a trust layer.
Yeah, properly. So, you know, we just decided to create this track. Personally, I just decided to create this track because, you know, we have seen many allocation mechanisms, you know, in Web3. You know, and I believe that Boulder is a good way to inspire people to explore new use cases, you know, in blockchain itself, particularly to these kind of niches, you know. So in terms of allocating, you know, the mechanisms that we have in allocation, quadratic voting, you know, quadratic funding, you know, I personally have explored many of them. I usually have been quite, at many levels, have explored those queries and repos, but by the end of the day, what will be the most suitable? If you don't have the answer, doesn't matter, because there are like 40 different, you know, allocation mechanisms down there, you know, that we need to explore, and we have done like 5 or something. What will be the best, you know, allocation mechanisms for DeSci? You know, you should go.
Oh well, like. I don't know, like there's so many ways we need to try out. And I think one thing is need to point over here. The best way is always like, how could we scaling and how could we make the whole, like, I would say allocation like speed faster, and how could the process more easier for the scientists to get the funding. I think that's the best way.
Yeah, how can we avoid this or create new frictionless applications or easy onboarding? You know, we have seen that with account abstraction, with many mechanisms that have been quite implemented, you know, in terms of AI, for example, for payments. You know, right now we're quite building the new infra or the new standards, you know, in terms of AI with blockchain, you know, with the Ethereum Foundation. But you should go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree that making the funding easier and more equitable and more available is like a very important step, and I'm very glad that people are focusing on that, because there's a lot of great work being done on various funding mechanisms. From my perspective, I've been shouting from the rooftops for about 2.5 years of something we call a knowledge-backed economy, which is this concept of finding a way to incentivize knowledge as an entity or as an asset. It's very difficult and abstract to take what is knowledge and turn it into some kind of asset. But now more than ever, with AI systems becoming the standard for people to interact with these technologies, the knowledge that they are informed by is entirely, let's call it, our IP. And I think IP is a very antiquated system that needs to be thrown out in many ways. But right now, our knowledge is being extracted wholesale across the world. Everybody, super smart people, are using AI, and that data is being sort of wholesale extracted by these large companies. And there's basically no ownership, there's basically no provenance, and there's certainly no incentive. In fact, you have to pay to have your information used and to train their next models. It makes absolute sense, and I think it's one of the most important things we can think about in the next couple of years, is to how to correctly prove or attribute or attest the contributions of your knowledge to AI systems, and to incentivize their usage with that provenance tracking. Because if not, systems will be used against us. We're going to be completely disenfranchised, and only those who already have money or who have access to frontier models will be able to access the future, and the rest of us will just be farmed for our knowledge entirely. So we are trialing this with some really interesting novel concepts with bonfires. I encourage you guys to contribute to the bonfire, because we're going to trial the knowledge economy, and people who participate get to participate in the economy of it. But like, if this interests you, please come talk to us. We have a great system for tracking knowledge contributions to AI brains through the graph, and we want more people to get excited about this, because I think if we don't do it, we are completely screwed. So,
Yeah, for sure. I believe that one of the key aspects of DeSci these days, how can we get into how can we develop applications for scientists, I believe that could be one approach. And the other one is, how can we inspire people? Because the people that are quite interested in DeSci, particularly, are the ones that are developers, have a good open source, background, for example, as me, and the ones that are looking for opportunities, and are quite like, essentially, just ended their bachelor's, or they just start a master's, and they just figured out that they have a long way to run, in terms of the competitive, about how is science right now, Even if you decide to, that's why many DeSci contributors and many people that are quite building in this space just pipe it, in a way, because they do not like the system that we have. And we need to create a new hybrid system. And, it's quite interesting to see in top journals, for example, Science, Frontiers, Nature, DeSci, Decentralized Science, as a topic, or as a branch. Frontiers in blockchain, for example, it has like 7 different categories, to publish papers, and many of them are frameworks, and many of them are written by people that are quite independent researchers, and they just explore and decide to dig on that rabbit hole, of what is DeSci. But by the end of the day, I believe that, I want that you share as simple as possible what are the key aspects that we need to improve in DeSci, because we're in Builder. This is the land of builders, of builders in Web3, since years. So what do you think that are the key aspects that we need to scale, in terms of the token engineering aspect, or foundational aspect, ethos, attribution, in terms of DeSci? Do you want to?
Key aspect?
Yeah.
I think we are talking about a lot of things already. Like we're talking about like funding, talking about like trust layer. We're talking about like social side, right? So another thing I think need to be add on is, how could we as a Citation the skills, right? Those researchers, there they have so many professional knowledge. How could those like scientific progress be quantified? So those are the things I would like to see in the future.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think probably the thing that is most impactful in the next year is like a reputation system, a much more robust reputation system that doesn't just track what your existing institutional reputation is, but like what your ongoing academic contributions and research reputation can be. I have some ideas. I think there's people building on that, but ultimately, because the trust, I think, is the biggest problem with the decentralized community in general, DeSci being a part of that, and just generally any radically open or new novel academic applications is the trust system. So reputation is very valuable for that. But also we need novelty. I think novelty is the big thing.
I believe that it's quite good. Some people just told me that we already ended the panel, but it's okay. I believe that if you want to dig more about this, we will have in Terrible Turtle, a tiny workshop regarding how can we explore new ways to do some DeSci at 1 p.m. today. So, thanks.
Thanks.
Woo! 1 week.